Okay, what we're going to be doing in lesson 7.6 is graphing linear systems on a coordinate plane. Okay, so what I've got is it's actually inequalities, okay? A coordinate plane, you know, is our x and y axis. So what they want me to do is they want me to graph both of these on the exact same coordinate plane. It's very simple, but because there is an inequality sign, I have to do it a little bit differently. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to write this y is greater than 3. So I can change my view. Oops. And x is less than or equal to 6. So I can change my view to a piece of graph paper. So you're going to want to get out a piece of graph paper. Okay? And we're going to graph each of these on a coordinate plane. I'm going to draw my y-axis, and then I'm going to draw my x-axis here. I'm going to label them. Okay, so I've got my x and y axis labeled. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. And what I want to do is I want to graph each of these. Well, they tell me that y is greater than 3. There's something that you have to know, though, before we graph. If you have a greater than, I'm sorry, did the wrong sign, a greater than or less than sign, you're always going to use a dotted line. If you have a greater than or equal to or less than or equal to sign, you're always going to use a solid line to graph. Okay, so that's something you have to memorize and you have to remember. I like to always say, if there's a solid line underneath the sign, that's how you know what you use. Okay, so let's graph our y. I'm going to graph that in blue. So I go to my y-axis because that's what it says, y is greater than, and I find 3 on my y-axis, which is right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line that cuts directly through the 3 on the y-axis. And I need to know, is this going to be a dotted line or a solid line? So I look at my sign. Well, it's greater than. So I just draw my dotted line. And it's going to go directly through my y-axis. Now, I've got a shade because it's y is greater than. So it's not just one number. It's every number that's going to be greater than 3. So, am I going to shade above the line or below the line? Well, let's look at the numbers. The numbers below the line are all getting smaller than 3. So, I definitely don't want to shade below, but all the numbers above the line are getting greater than 3, which is exactly what it says. Y is greater than 3. So, I shade everything above the line. Okay, and you just keep shading everything above the line. Okay, now on this same graph, I'm going to do this in a different color, we'll do it in green. They also want me to graph y is less than or equal to 6. So I go to my x-axis because this letter right here tells me exactly what axis to go to, and I find 6 on the x-axis. I have to ask myself, am I going to draw a solid line or a dotted line through it? Well, let's look at my sign. Less than or equal to, it has that solid line underneath it. So I know I need to draw a solid line. So I take my solid line, draw it directly through my x-axis at 6, and now I need to shade. I know that x is less than 6, so I need to look at my x-axis only and find all the numbers that are going less than 6. Well, it's all this way, so that means I need to shade everything to the left of the line. And what they're doing here, the whole reason why you're doing this, is they're looking for that section that's going to be a solution to both equations, okay? Or both, inequalities, which is right here. This section right here is going to be all the numbers that are a solution to both inequalities, because they're shaded in both places. Now, the places that are shaded in only green are only going to be a solution to x is less than 6. The places that are shaded in only blue are going to be only a solution to y is greater than 3. But in the section that they are both shaded, we know that it's both a solution. So that's what they're trying to get you to do here. Okay, so let's do example 2. It gets a little more complicated. You say, wait a second, there's an x and a y. Guess what? We graph it just like we would a regular line. So we put it in y equals mx plus b form. You say, but there's no equal sign. That's okay. All right, we're going to use our greater than or less than sign. So I know exactly what kind of line to draw and where to shade. So I subtract 1x on both sides. And I'm going to get y is less than negative 1x plus 3. And then on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1x again on this side over here. And I'm going to get 4y is greater than or equal to negative 1x plus 3. And I need to divide by 4 everywhere. Cancel this out, and I'm going to get y. And you know what? This is supposed to be a 4 right here, not a 3. So we're going to change that. That'll make our lives a little bit easier. And I'm going to get 4 is greater than negative 1/4 x plus 4 over 4 is 1. Okay? So I've graphed this. I put it in y equals mx plus b form. So now I get to graph it. So let's go back to our graph paper. Erase everything but my equations here. Draw my y-axis and my x-axis. And I'm going to label them just like I did the other graph. Okay, so what you want to do when you graph these, it's a little bit different. Okay, we're going to graph, let's see, the first one using blue. We're going to graph it just like we would a regular line. So I know that this is my y-intercept here. So I'm going to go to 3 on my y-axis. Then I'm going to use my m, which is negative 1. So I'm going to go down 1 over 1. And then I have to ask myself, okay, I got to draw a line through these 2 points. Is it going to be a dotted line or a solid line? Look at my sign, less than. So I know it's going to be a dotted line. So I draw my dotted line through that. Now I got to figure out where to shade. Anytime you have a line like this, it's always y. So I'm only looking at the y-axis. And you say, how do you know it's y? Because it's the variable that's right here by itself. So I say y is less than. So I need to look at my y-axis only. Which way are the numbers going less than? Right here below the line. So I want to shade everything below the line. You say everything? Yep, everything. Okay. Now let's graph the next line. I know I'm going to go to, and we're going to do this one in green. 1 on my y-axis, so I put my first point here. Then I'm going to go down 1. But I'm going to go over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And am I going to have a dotted line or a solid line? I'm going to have a dotted. And these are not perfectly straight lines, and that's okay because we don't have a ruler. Okay? And then it's greater than. So I know it's going to be everything above the line. So I shade everything above the line. And if you notice, the place that they're looking for right here is this section of the graph where both colors are being shaded. So that's where I know I can find my solutions to both equations. Okay, so that's how you're going to work or solve linear systems of linear inequalities. So I want you to go ahead and I want you to do this next example on your own, both of these next examples with Miss Steinke, and she will help you with anything you need, and then you're going to work on your homework, which your homework for tonight is page 434, and that's just going to be numbers 23 through 25, okay, 23 through 25.